The letter arrived on a Tuesday, trembling in Ethan's hands like a confession he wasn't ready to hear. It was his grandmother's handwriting, elegant and deliberate, promising him her lakeside house in upstate New York, the one place where he'd always felt safe. But the final line gutted him. They sold it, Ethan. Your parents. Without telling you. Ethan Hart, 27, stood frozen in his cramped Brooklyn apartment, the city's hum fading into a dull roar. The house wasn't just a house. It was summers spent with Grandma Rose, her stories of love and rebellion, her fierce acceptance when he came out as gay at 17. She'd promised him the house, her sanctuary, because she knew he needed in a world that didn't always understand. Now it was gone, sold by his own family, who'd never accepted him or his partner, Caleb. He sank onto the couch, the letter crumpling in his fist. Caleb, his boyfriend of 3 years, knelt beside him, his blue eyes searching Ethan's face. What is it? Caleb asked, voice soft but urgent. Ethan handed him the letter, unable to speak. As Caleb read, his jaw tightened, and Ethan felt the familiar ache of love mixed with fear. They'd fought so hard to build a life together, but this betrayal cut deeper than any rejection they'd faced. The house was more than walls and windows. It was Rose's legacy, a 2-story Victorian with creaking floors and a wraparound porch overlooking Lake Champlain. Ethan could still smell the lavender she grew, hear her laughter as they baked bread together. She'd been his anchor when his parents turned cold, their disapproval a silent weight after he brought Caleb home. You're confused, his mother had said. You'll ruin the family name, his father added. Rose, though, had hugged him tight and whispered, You're enough, just as you are. Now, that sanctuary was gone, sold without a word. Ethan's phone buzzed, his mother's name on the screen. He ignored it, rage simmering. Caleb's hand found his, grounding him. We'll figure this out, Caleb said, his voice steady despite the storm in his eyes. Ethan nodded, but doubt gnawed at him. How do you reclaim what's been stolen by the people who should love you most? They drove upstate the next morning, the city skyline fading into rolling hills. Caleb's old pickup rattled along the highway, the radio playing soft folk tunes. Ethan stared out the window, memories flooding back. Fishing with Rose, her teaching him to dance on the porch, her stories of defying her own family to marry for love. She'd left him the house in her will, a final act of defiance against her son, Ethan's father, who'd never forgiven her for supporting Ethan's truth. The closer they got to the lake, the heavier Ethan's chest felt. Caleb reached for his hand, his calloused fingers a quiet promise. We'll get it back, he said. Ethan wanted to believe him, but the betrayal stung too deeply. His parents hadn't just sold the house. They'd erased his history, his refuge, his right to belong. When they reached the property, Ethan's breath caught. The house stood unchanged, its white paint peeling slightly, the porch swaying in the breeze. But a sold sign stabbed into the lawn like a dagger. Ethan's knees buckled, and Caleb caught him, pulling him close. We're not done yet, Caleb whispered, his voice fierce. Ethan clung to him, the lake's calm surface mocking the chaos inside him. They parked and approached the house, the gravel crunching under their boots. A realtor, a middle-aged woman with a tight smile, emerged from the front door. Can I help you? She asked, eyeing them warily. Ethan's voice shook as he explained. Rose's will, the house, the betrayal. The realtor's face softened, but she shook her head. The sale closed last week. The new owners take possession tomorrow. Ethan's world tilted. Tomorrow. One day to undo this. He looked at Caleb, whose jaw was set, eyes blazing with determination. We need to see the will, Caleb said, his tone leaving no room for argument. The realtor hesitated, then nodded. I'll call the lawyer. But you should know, the buyers are a powerful family. They won't let this go easily. As she walked away to make the call, Ethan leaned against Caleb, the weight of loss and love pressing against his ribs. The house loomed before them, a symbol of everything he'd fought for, and everything he stood to lose. He didn't know how they'd fight this, but with Caleb beside him, he felt a flicker of hope. They'd face this together, no matter the cost. The lawyer's office in Plattsburgh was a cramped, wood-paneled room that smelled of old paper and coffee. Ethan sat rigid in a creaky chair, Caleb's hand resting on his knee like an anchor. The lawyer, Mr. Grayson, was a wiry man with glasses perched on his nose, his expression grim as he slid Rose's will across the desk. Your grandmother was clear, he said. The house was yours, Ethan, but your parents contested the will, claiming you were unfit. Unfit? Ethan's voice cracked, the words slicing through him. Caleb's grip tightened, his silence a steady presence. Grayson sighed, adjusting his glasses. They argued you'd abandoned the family, that your lifestyle disqualified you. They had power of attorney over Rose's estate after a stroke. They sold the house before I could intervene. Ethan's mind reeled. His parents had known about the will and buried it, just as they buried their acceptance of him. He thought of his mother's tight-lipped smiles at family dinners, his father's cold silences. They'd never met Caleb's eyes, never acknowledged the man Ethan loved. Now, they'd stolen the one thing that tied him to Rose's unconditional love. Caleb leaned forward, his voice low but firm. What can we do? There has to be a way to challenge this. Grayson hesitated, flipping through papers. The sale is legally binding, but there's a slim chance. If you can prove fraud or coercion in the transfer of power of attorney, you could contest the sale. You'd need evidence, and fast. The new owners move in tomorrow. Ethan's pulse raced. Evidence. He barely knew where to start. His parents live an hour away in Albany, their pristine suburban home a stark contrast to Rose's cozy lakeside haven. He hadn't spoken to them in months, not since their last argument when his father called Caleb a phase. The idea of confronting them now felt like walking into a lion's den. Back in the truck, Caleb turned to him, his blonde hair catching the afternoon light. We go to Albany, he said, as if reading Ethan's mind. We confront them, find proof. They can't just erase you like this. Ethan nodded, but fear coiled in his gut. He wasn't just fighting for the house. He was fighting for his place in a family that had rejected him. The drive to Albany was tense, the silence broken only by Caleb's quiet humming to the radio. Ethan's thoughts spiraled. Rose's laughter, her stories of fighting for love in a world that judged her, her promise that the house would always be his. He glanced at Caleb, whose steady presence kept him grounded. I don't know if I can face them, Ethan admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. Caleb's eyes softened. You don't have to do it alone. He reached for Ethan's hand, their fingers lacing together. In that moment, Ethan felt the weight of their love, a love that had survived judgment, whispers, and now this betrayal. It gave him the courage to keep going. When they pulled into his parents' driveway, the house looked as cold as ever. Manicured lawn, white shutters, a facade of perfection. Ethan's stomach churned as he knocked on the door. His mother answered, her face paling at the sight of him. Ethan, she said, her voice tight. What are you doing here? I know about the house, he said, his voice steadier than he felt. You sold it. You went behind my back. His mother's eyes flickered, but she didn't invite them in. His father appeared behind her, his expression hard. You have no right to that house, he said. You chose to walk away from this family. Caleb stepped forward, his voice calm but unyielding. He didn't walk away. You push him out. The air crackled with tension, and Ethan felt a surge of gratitude for Caleb's strength. His parents' silence was deafening, but Ethan caught a glimpse of something in his mother's eyes. Guilt, maybe, or regret. We're not leaving until you tell me the truth, Ethan said, his voice rising. Why did you do it? Why did you take her house from me? His father's jaw tightened, but his mother looked away, her hands trembling. Ethan knew then. There was something they weren't saying, something hidden in their silence. He just had to find it. The confrontation in Albany left Ethan shaken, but Caleb's steady presence kept him from unraveling. His parents had shut the door after a tense standoff, offering no answers, only deflections. You're making a scene, his mother had hissed, as if Ethan's pain was an inconvenience. But her trembling hands and averted gaze told him there was more to uncover. They weren't just hiding their disapproval. They were hiding something tangible, something that could prove their betrayal. Back at a motel near Lake Champlain, Ethan and Caleb pored over the few documents Grayson had given them. Rose's will, a copy of the power of attorney, and the sale contract. The buyers were the Whitmores, a wealthy family known for snapping up lakeside properties to flip for profit. Ethan's heart sank. The house wasn't just sold. It was at risk of being torn down for some soulless vacation home. Caleb spread the papers across the motel bed, his brow furrowed. Look at the dates, he said, pointing to the power of attorney. Your parents signed this a month before Rose's stroke. That's not normal. They had to know something. Ethan's pulse quickened. Rose had been sharp until her final months, her mind clear when she updated her will to name him. Had his parents planned this all along? We need to get into their house, Ethan said, the idea forming before he could stop it. If there's proof, it's there, emails, documents, something. Caleb raised an eyebrow, but a spark of mischief lit his eyes. You're suggesting we break in? He asked, half teasing. Ethan flushed. Not break in. Just look around. They're at their country club tomorrow morning. We could use my old key. It was reckless, but time was running out. The Whitmores would take possession in hours, and with them, any chance of reclaiming the house. Caleb nodded, his hand brushing Ethan's cheek. Okay, but we do this together. Ethan leaned into his touch, the warmth of Caleb's love cutting through his fear. They weren't just fighting for a house. They were fighting for their future, for the life Rose had wanted for them. The next morning, under a gray dawn, they drove back to Albany. Ethan's old key still worked, the lock clicking open with a sound that felt too loud in the quiet neighborhood. Inside, the house was pristine, a sterile contrast to Rose's warm, lived-in home. Ethan's chest tightened as he stepped into his childhood, memories of arguments and silences flooding back. They split up, Ethan heading to his father's study, Caleb to the upstairs office. Ethan rifled through drawers, finding nothing but bills and golf club receipts. His heart pounded, time was slipping away. Then, Caleb's voice called softly from upstairs. Ethan, come here. In the office, Caleb held a folder labeled estate. Inside were emails between Ethan's parents and a lawyer, not Grayson, but someone else. The emails discussed Rose's will, her poor judgment, and a plan to secure power of attorney before her stroke. One line made Ethan's blood run cold. We can't let Ethan have the house. It's worth too much. His parents hadn't just betrayed him. They'd profited from it. Ethan's hands shook as he photographed the emails. Caleb's arm slid around his waist, steadying him. This is it, Caleb said. This proves they acted in bad faith. Ethan nodded, but the weight of his parents' greed pressed against him. They hadn't just rejected his identity. They'd sold his legacy for a payout. As they slipped out of the house, the sky was brightening, the deadline looming. They drove back to Plattsburgh, the folder clutched in Ethan's lap. Grayson met them at his office, his eyes widening as he read the emails. This is enough to file an injunction, he said. It won't undo the sale yet, but it'll delay the transfer and give us time to fight. Ethan felt a flicker of hope, but it was tempered by dread. The Whitmores wouldn't back down easily, and his parents' betrayal was now undeniable. As he and Caleb stepped outside, the lake glimmered in the distance, a reminder of what they were fighting for. Ethan turned to Caleb, his voice soft. I don't know if we'll win this. Caleb pulled him close, his lips brushing Ethan's forehead. We'll win because we're fighting for us. The injunction was filed by noon, a temporary lifeline that kept the Whitmores from moving into Rose's house. Ethan and Caleb sat in a diner across from Grayson's office, the weight of the morning settling over them. The emails were damning, but the fight was far from over. The Whitmores had deep pockets and deeper connections, and Ethan's parents were already lawyering up, their silence replaced by aggressive denials. Ethan stared at his coffee, the steam curling like the doubts in his mind. What if we lose? He asked, his voice barely audible over the diner's chatter. Caleb reached across the table, his fingers brushing Ethan's. Then we build our own home, he said. But we're not there yet. Rose wanted you to have this, and we're not giving up. Ethan managed a small smile, Caleb's unwavering faith pulling him back from the edge. Grayson called him back to his office that afternoon. The Whitmores had agreed to a meeting, but it wasn't out of kindness. They want to settle, Grayson said, his tone cautious. They're offering a payout to drop the case. Ethan's stomach twisted. A payout meant giving up the house for good, trading Rose's legacy for money. He shook his head. No, I want the house. The meeting was set for the next morning at the house itself, a neutral ground that felt anything, but Ethan barely slept that night, his dreams haunted by Rose's voice and the creak of the porch swing. Caleb held him close, their bodies tangled in the motel bed, a quiet reminder that they were in this together. When they arrived at the house, the Whitmores were already there, a polished couple in their 50s, flanked by a lawyer with a sharp smile. Ethan's parents stood off to the side, their faces unreadable. The air was thick with tension, the lake's calm surface a cruel contrast to the storm brewing. Mr. Whitmore spoke first, his voice clipped. We bought this property legally. You have no claim. Ethan's heart pounded, but Caleb's hand on his back gave him strength. You bought it through fraud, Ethan said, holding up the folder of emails. My parents manipulated my grandmother's estate. That house was hers to give, and she gave it to me. His voice shook, but he didn't back down, even as his father's eyes bored into him. The Whitmore's lawyer scoffed, but Grayson stepped in, laying out the evidence. The emails, the questionable power of attorney, Rose's clear intent in her will. The Whitmores exchanged glances, their confidence faltering. Ethan's mother finally spoke, her voice sharp. You don't deserve that house, Ethan. You chose this life over us. The words hit like a slap, but Caleb's voice cut through, steady and fierce. He didn't choose this life over you. You chose your prejudice over him. Ethan's chest swelled with love and gratitude. Caleb wasn't just his partner. He was a shield, his voice when his own faltered. The meeting ended in a stalemate, but Grayson was optimistic. The evidence is strong, he said as they left. The court will likely rule in your favor, but it'll take time. Ethan nodded, but the weight of his mother's words lingered. He and Caleb walked to the dock, the same one where they'd shared countless quiet moments. The lake stretched before them, endless and serene. I'm sorry, Ethan said, his voice breaking, for dragging you into this. Caleb turned to him, his eyes fierce with love. You're not dragging me anywhere. I'm here because I love you. This house, this fight, it's ours. He pulled Ethan into a kiss, soft and unyielding, the world fading around them. In that moment, Ethan knew the house was worth fighting for, but Caleb was his true home. Weeks turned into months, the legal battle stretching into the crisp New York autumn. Ethan and Caleb returned to Brooklyn, but the fight for Rose's house consumed them. Court hearings, depositions, and endless paperwork tested their resolve, but Caleb's unwavering support kept Ethan grounded. The emails had shaken the Whitmore's case, and Ethan's parents' defense was crumbling under scrutiny. Yet, the uncertainty gnawed at Ethan. Would the house still be his when the dust settled? One chilly October morning, Grayson called. The judge ruled in your favor, he said, his voice warm with relief. The sale's been voided. The house is yours. Ethan's knees gave out, and Caleb caught him, laughing through tears. They drove to Lake Champlain that day, the sold sign gone, the house waiting like an old friend. Stepping inside, Ethan felt Rose's presence in every creak of the floorboards, every lavender-scented corner. He and Caleb stood on the porch, the lake shimmering under a golden sunset. This is ours, Ethan whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Caleb pulled him close, their hands intertwined. Ours, he echoed, and they kissed, the weight of their journey dissolving in the warmth of their love. But the victory wasn't just the house. It was the life they'd built through every fight, every tear, every moment of doubt. Ethan's parents hadn't reached out, their silence a final severance. Yet, Ethan felt lighter, freed from their judgment. Rose had given him more than a house. She'd given him the courage to live his truth, to love fiercely, to fight for what mattered. That night, they sat on the dock, stars reflecting on the lake. Ethan traced the lines of Caleb's face, memorizing the man who'd stood by him through it all. We're going to make this place ours, he said, his voice steady with hope. A home for us, for anyone who needs it. Caleb smiled, his eyes bright. A sanctuary, just like Rose wanted. They began rebuilding, not just the house, but their future. They painted walls, planted lavender, and opened the doors to friends who'd faced their own battles for acceptance. The house became a haven, a testament to love's resilience. Ethan knew the scars of betrayal would linger, but with Caleb by his side, he'd found something stronger, a legacy of courage, love, and belonging that no one could take away.